I'm Tom Baker, this is Chasing Cars, and this is the new Audi RS6, the daddy of practical performance cars as far as I'm concerned. This new generation massively amps up the extroversion factor of the RS6, which has traditionally really just looked like the underlying A6 wagon. You kind of had to be a bit of a train spotter to know that you were looking at the fastest possible version. That's no longer the case, as Audi has decided to change course on the way their RS vehicles look and make them significantly more pumped up than the vehicles that they are based upon. For the RS6, that means swapping out the nose cone entirely and giving it the face of the RS7, which is set lower, wider, and just looks more aggressive all round. You can see these outrageous pumped up guards on this red car here, the huge wheels that really fill those guards, and round the back there's also a very distinctive treatment of the rear diffuser and the huge dual pipes. So basically on the road, the RS6 is no longer really a Q car. Everybody is going to recognize that this is a serious performance vehicle. But to me, I reckon that's okay, because the mission of this car has stayed the same, and that is rolling significant practicality into the body of a traditional wagon, which means this thing drives like a car and not like an SUV. There's still not that many people out there that prefer station wagons in the current market compared to crossovers. But because this thing rides like a car, handles like a car, and is decked out in an incredibly sumptuous manner inside, it's really worth considering if what you want is a great blend of performance and plushness in one car. And I think that's why a lot of people name the RS6 as part of their ideal two-car garage, because this really is one of those rare vehicles that can do almost anything. Now, in today's video, we're going to check out the interior, the back seat, and the practicality, then take the RS6 out onto the road and see how this new generation with its 4-litre twin-turbo V8 performs. But before we do that, make sure to hit subscribe below and the notification bell. All right, let's strap in and get started. Now, we've looked at a few new Audi A6s here on the channel, and largely the RS6 inside is a variation on a theme, because Audi knows that people kind of like their restrained and elegant interiors, and there's no real need for it to shout in the cabin. That being said, the RS6 does get a few additions that the regular car doesn't get, namely these bucket seats, which are both really comfortable and finely upholstered in Napa leather. So they feel super soft, super luxurious, but they also hold you in the corners, but not too much. While the bolsters are moderately high, I do feel like most body types are going to be able to fit into these seats without being uncomfortable. And that kind of fits with the RS6's grand touring vibe. Obviously, Audi or others can sell you more focused, smaller, crazier sports cars, but this is about blending those attributes with really long distance cruising ability. Now, the RS6 that you see here does have a couple of expensive options. The sensory package brings these alien-like Bang & Olufsen 3D speakers. They sound absolutely cracking. They also add lots of little touches around the cabin, like this airbag casing in leather, for example. That actually isn't standard. This car also has the RS design package, which gives it an Alcantara steering wheel. If you've been a subscriber for a while, and I hope you have, you'll know that I'm not too crash hot on Alcantara wheels, but as standard, it comes in beautiful perforated leather. We also get stuff like Alcantara running along the sides of the console, which I'm more of a fan of, I would say. In terms of tech, we've got lots of it. We've got two big touchscreens here. The center one here is for your navigation, your media. That's really crisp. Also offers up wireless Apple CarPlay and wired Android Auto, so that works tremendously well. Your lower touchscreen is really for climate and a few shortcuts. And on the move, this isn't as easy to use as rotary dials, so it's kind of something you have to get used to. In front of you, there's also a really large virtual cockpit where you can put a full map, performance gauges, basically whatever you want. It's very customizable and very cool. One thing I will say though is this new Audi design language is quite a break from the previous RS6. There's a lot more piano black, and this piece here, it's still rattling. This design's been in production for like 18 months now or so overseas, and I feel like we're still needing to get to the point where it feels as tight as the old model. So hopefully that's something that continues to be worked on. In terms of practicality, it's all right. We got two cup holders here, shallow bin with wireless charging here, and little door bins. For a big car, you'd probably expect a little more incidental storage, but hey, that's slim pickings for criticism. Let's check out the back seat. I mentioned up front that the RS6 is all about practicality, and it's here in the back seat. and also in the large boot where that really becomes clear, because this is a big car for a big country in a lot of ways, and you're able to transport adults back here without a problem. So for myself at 6 foot, headroom is really fine, even though this car has a dual pane sunroof that looks really cool. Legroom's also no issue behind this rather bulky seat. It is a bulkier seat than the standard car, doesn't really cause any problems. And tow room's good too. The center seat is a bit of a perch. The floor's really high, so I'd basically keep this car as a 4-seater. If you need more space, you could always consider something like the forthcoming RS Q8, but that would really take away from the RS6's fast wagon jam anyway. Now down here we've got a console with air vents, temperature zones for each of the outboard seats, and separate fan controls. That's pretty rare to see, and heating for these outboard seats too. Plus 2 fast charging USB ports, 12-volt socket, flip down armrest, cup holders, and that armrest just feels really substantial. So in terms of cruising back here, doing a road trip in the back seat, you won't feel shortchanged. And then if it's just glinting a little bit too much sun here, these integrated sun blinds are part of the sensory package. So all in all, really nice place back here in the back. Right, so that covers the RS6's rather opulent cabin, and this makes pretty nice transport for a family of 5. But one reason why you buy a long-roofed vehicle, of course, is decent cargo space, and heading around the back of this rather attractive estate car that does look a bit more extroverted than before, the RS6 has a standard power tailgate as you'd expect, and it offers a decent, if not massive, 565 litres of cargo room, but the boot has plenty of special features, including netting, adjustable load rails, plenty of little touches off to the side, including coat hooks and remote releases for the back seats. So as far as cargo carrying capacity goes, this is a pretty complete vehicle, but the RS6 is really all about the drive, and that's where we're going now. So jumping behind the wheel of the new Audi RS6. This is a pretty good day. I've been pretty excited for this. Makes it all the better that it's actually my birthday today. And I couldn't really think of any new car in 2020 that I'd rather drive today than this. That being said, you know me, I take a critical eye into everything that I sit in and drive, and so it goes for the RS6. So we're going to talk about what this car does well, what this car doesn't do so well, and the other options that you can consider in this segment. But first, let's remind ourselves of what's going on underneath that much more aggressive looking bonnet in the 2020 RS6. Well, there's a 4-litre twin-turbo petrol V8, a bit of a throwback engine. It has heaps of stuff bolted onto it to help it get better economy and pass ever more stringent emissions regulations in Europe, but you do get a sense the RS6 is not going to be a petrol V8 forever. This might be the last generation of it, and that's a shame because this is a cracker of an engine. 441 kilowatts of power and 800 Newton meters of torque are the outputs. We have an 8-speed torque converter automatic gearbox sending that torque to all 4 wheels via a rear biased quattro all-wheel drive system, and what this all adds up to is a 0 to 100 time of 3.6 seconds, which is quite astonishing for a vehicle that is this large and this practical. But the straight line pace is just one small part of the RS6 story, because actually what this car is about is how Audi are able to channel all of their excellence in making really sharp, accurate, surgical handling vehicles and bundling that up into a package that actually lets you put a couple of child seats in the back, lets you put a whole bunch of stuff into the boot, and then take the family on a very fast road trip. Or in reality, it's a car that can be used for that stuff when you need to, and then you can actually take it out by yourself or with a partner and just carve up some great roads. As I mentioned before, this is kind of a car that can do everything. There's not really a car that can do everything out there, but vehicles like the Audi RS6 come pretty darn close. It's just a really lovely cohesive package, but the engine is a real standout. It's tractable, it's incredibly refined, and if we put the car into RS1 mode, it sounds pretty ridiculous as well. That said, the RS6 is not one of the shoutier Audis out there. It doesn't need to bellow. From the outside, it's pretty loud. Here in the cabin, you're just kind of given a reminder of the noise of that V8 engine. And I think that's why a lot of people choose to do an exhaust on the RS6 to make it a little bit more extroverted, because out of the box, it's quite elegant, it's quite refined, it's a little bit subtle. It doesn't need to shout to the world about what it is. However, I do think that approach not clashes, but sits in tension with the more aggressive bodywork on the 2020 version. So that's the engine, big tick. Efficiency, not that bad. You get about 12, 13 litres per 100 kilometres in grand touring like this, more if you're just using it for your commute. But the next part of the story is the ride and handling. And it's here where you actually have to make a choice on the RS6, because you can either have it equipped with air suspension, like this Nardo Grey example I'm driving now, or with steel springs with the RS Plus suspension and adaptive dampers. And it does change the character of the car. The air suspension route gives you a more plush experience. It can definitely still turn it on in the corners because it can reduce the amount that the wheels are allowed to travel, but it's actually the more dedicated RS steel suspension that allows you to really dig into the upper limits of the RS's abilities. So depending on what you're actually going to be using the car for, you can make that choice. For me, air suspension is a natural fit for the RS6 because these sorts of cars have to be able to do the commute, they have to be able to do road trips and grand touring and be really comfy. And it's especially good fit for the huge 22-inch wheels on this car. So the ride can be either very good with air suspension or just good with the other suspension option. The handling is really good no matter which route you go for. It's obviously a little flatter with the steel suspension, but even with air, it's just terrific. The body sits remarkably flat in the corners. There's an astonishing amount of mechanical grip in the RS6 for a vehicle that weighs this much, and great chemical grip as well from the tyres. Despite that heavy engine over the nose, it still turns in relatively crisply, and Audi have fed in a quicker ratio into the steering rack of this car compared to more mainstream A6 and S6 versions to really make it feel like it's responding underneath your hands quickly. Nice small steering wheel, got the Alcantara rim in this car. Don't have to have that if you don't want it, but it does make the wheel grippier, but it also means the oils in your hands are gonna destroy it pretty quickly. As for the rest of the handling, you can actually dig into power oversteer in the RS6, which is pretty darn cool. You do need to disable the electronic nannies to do that, because by default, with stability control fully on, it's a very surgical, not clinical, but surgical vehicle that is aiming to give you as much traction as possible at all times. However, when you disable that and you really dig in with the right boot, then it will give you power oversteer. No great shock really, rear biased all drive, 800 Newton meters, that's plenty of shove. Refinement is also amazing for a car with such wide performance tyres on it. It's pretty quiet in the cabin, leaving you free to enjoy the really great Bang & Olufsen stereo in this car. There's 2 levels of stereos, both of them are pretty great. There's also good visibility, backwards, sideward, big mirrors, frontward, you can see heaps of stuff. Safety-wise, you feel totally secure. We've got Audi's best stuff here. We've got a 360 camera, we've got junction assistant that won't let you turn into the path of an oncoming perpendicular vehicle. We've got high-speed AEB and adaptive cruise, lane keep assist with strong lane centering if you want it, and one touch to get rid of it, which I really like. So as an all-round vehicle, does it get much better? I don't think so. So that's a detailed view of the 2020 Audi RS6. A pretty mega vehicle if you ask me, because it combines true load carrying capacity and passenger carrying capacity with incredible performance that belies the weight and size of this vehicle, blending in an absolutely tremendous V8 engine with amazing handling and a really opulent cabin that's full of high technology as well. But I'm keen to know your view on the RS6. Is this the one car you'd have if you could only ever have one? Let me know all your thoughts down below in the comments. While you're there, make sure to hit subscribe and the notification bell. And as always, thanks for watching Chasing Cars.